This week on iFanboy, dark comics.
This is not what I meant at all.
What do you want? It's dark. Hello, welcome to iFanboy, the comic book discussion show. My name is Connor Kilpatrick. I'm here with Ron Richards.
Hello, Connor.
And Josh Flanagan.
Comic books.
Oh boy, here we go.
Grim and gritty.
They're very dark.
Very serious.
They're threatening.
Watch the microphone.
Are you do that voice the whole show?
I might.
We don't have lozenges in the budget.
No. Well,
So-
the thing is, it's hay fever season. So
Are you Batman?
no, that didn't bother me. We're going to talk about the darkness in comic books, the often referred to as grim and gritty, the so cliched newspaper headline. Comics
are not for kids. It's a conceptual kind of discussion about the state of the tone of comics.
It's the flip side to the coin of the greatness of 1986 is also the cross that comics bears after 1986.
Yeah, and the inability for newspaper editors to come up with a new headline.
Slow and steady decline since '86. Comics are characterized these days as being serious and real and dark. Gritty kind of, mostly serious realism.
To the point where the colorful, fantastic, whimsical, fantasy-based superhero comics are often get highlighted because look, it's like they used to be.
Mm-hmm. And people go, I don't know about that stuff.
So over the past 25 years, you've had leather jackets, you've had stubble, you've had death, and you've had
no more
divorce,
cigars though.
Divorce, no smoking, and it's taken a real kind of darker turn. Why?
How'd we get here, Josh? Tell us a story.
Yeah.
Well, the real number here that matters is 1986.
Yes.
1986. There's not that there were no dark comics before 1986. There were.
Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil brought Batman back.
Were.
Before Frank Miller, Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil brought him back from the 60s.
And
Dark
even
Phoenix.
Prior to that,
dark in the title.
That's true, and the red was a little darker than a normal shade of red.
Crimson Phoenix.
If you go back even further, prior to the Wortham stuff in the 50s, EC crime comics and horror comics, and there were all sorts of different genre stuff that was not necessarily for kids.
And the Golden Age was pretty dark.
Yeah, but it all sort of went away for a while, and then it began creeping back in. I think when the real collector mentality started, that the 80s and the comic shops started showing up, and I feel like they started to go for an audience of adults.
Yeah.
Specifically, and people were like, well, I love these stories from my youth, but how can I make them something new?
Well, what happened was that you had, you had in the 40s and the 50s the dark comics then, and then in the 60s you had the camp era, which is mainly the Batman TV show, which for all good it did more harm. That's the source of your Biff Pan Bow, whatever.
Yeah.
And the people who grew up on that, then when they got to the 80s, direct market emerged, and you had things like the Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, things like that were kind of darker. The audience was growing up, and the direct market in comics just laser focused on this maturing audience instead of catering towards all ages. And then, and the sensibilities were going in that direction as well. The 1989 Batman Tim Burton movie was a very dark movie. Violence and action films were at an all-time high. You had, Bruce Willis's and Arnold Schwarzenegger's of the world.
It was a tough time.
Yeah, and so, honestly, and so then you had more of people wanted things with an edge. They wanted, heavy metal and rock was becoming like Guns N' Roses. You had it was a very dark time for the late 80s. You're coming out of economic prosperity.
You're coming out of the Cold War, which had really probably more to do with anything else. This sort of sense of fear of nuclear annihilation all the time. And really the two names for this, and there were others involved, but the two main names, the ones that lasted, Frank Miller and Alan Moore. Yeah. Now, Alan Moore really came to prominence and got known for doing Marvel Man, which is one of the first adult takes on what was Captain Marvel, which was a very it was extremely not offensive, grim, or gritty or anything, and he just took it and he threw it completely the other way. And Moore has often complained, and I think rightly, that after he did that, nobody did anything different.
Well, we've had ages in comics. We had Golden Age, Dark, Silver Age was the response to the Golden Age, which was light. Then the Bronze Age was sort of not as dark, but not as bright as Silver Age. And then we had the modern age, whatever age you want to call this age, which started in '86 and has just not stopped.
Right.
And that's, I think, the complaint is that Watchmen and Dark Knight were so influential and so good and so popular that They've been replicated or attempted to be replicated for the last however many years.
And just to give, but that's the same. That's the same in any medium.
25 years.
You know, the Beatles had a huge impact, and how many
the music has changed completely. Since
no,
the
it
Beatles.
has. But then at the same time, you get bands like Fountains of Wayne a couple years ago.
But
like they're just doing the Beatles.
But no one's beaten the Beatles.
No, but the point is, if,
no
if every band was Fountains of Wayne, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Every comic is
not every comic.
Vast majority of
I would agree with the
tonally.
majority, but not every comic.
But the big sales events, the big all the things that happen, they all are still following that. And so Miller and Moore, the 86 wasn't the first thing they ever did like this. Miller, experimented a lot in the Daredevil series in the 82, 83, and that went in places that comics don't normally, and it's changed Matt Murdock as a character for 30 years after that. We're just starting to get out of it now, which is good. Moore went and did Swamp Thing and everything, but 86, we call that, and also Miller had done Batman Year One, which was, again, that first step. But really, when you talk about Watchmen and you talk about Dark Knight Returns, those are the bellwethers for this change. Like, these were the huge sales, huge headlines. They're still talked about as probably the best of superhero comics, but they were done in this adult style. We took this thing that was a kid's medium, which is, and we made it into an adult thing, and we're still
25 years later, we're still doing
those
stories. So the question becomes: do comics have to be this way to be good comics? Because you see a lot of reaction to comics from readers. If it's not super dark and gritty and serious, it's not considered good. Now, what do we think about the state of comics through that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the recent changes at DC, DC Comics relaunched their whole line. I mean, hell, they even have a title called Justice League Dark.
Yeah.
And so,
but the thing is that actually feels like something that would have happened in the 90s, because in the 90s that whole thing was still fresh, and so you're going with, like, everybody was dark, and when Wolverine got real dark, and Punisher, and like that was like their heydays, and everybody had guns, and but
Wolverine get dark in the 90s, tell me.
Didn't he? No,
he went feral, but he didn't go dark. That was a whole. But his feral costume was a big red bandana. But I know what you mean. I mean, the Punisher.
Well, even if you look at like his time as Patch in Madripoor, like
that was 91 or 90-91. Yeah,
that's the 90s.
Yeah,
I remember
for 20
piles of bodies.
Yeah,
I know, but that version of the character carried through. I feel like he got more and more badass from that point on.
But we're still getting away from the question: is this good for comics at all? This is how they are.
There's two ways to answer that. Is it good for comics? At first it was because it was invigorating. I think that it gave people
doing something new,
a new creative outlet. Now that 25 years on is still being explored, and some of it is still entertaining and some of it is still creative. On the other hand, it's a crutch, I think.
I think like anything, a bad comic that is playing on all those tropes and things like that. It can be a crutch, and like, they're just trying to redo this poorly. But someone doing it well is, we've all enjoyed, the noir resurgence over the past 10 years. You had Gotham Central, you had, with Criminal, you've had things like that. Would that have happened if we didn't go through this evolution?
Well, see, I think of Criminal as a resurgence of the kinds of comics that they used to do a really long time ago.
Yep.
But if you're talking about here's a good example. The recent Detective Comics run by Scott Snyder and Jock and Francesco Francavilla. That's dark.
Yeah,
it's
really
scary.
dark.
It's it's kind of awful. Like, it wouldn't have happened without those. And I don't mean awful quality wise. It was fantastic to read, but it's not an all ages. Yeah, it really is, and it was done really well. But at the same time, eventually you're gonna get to what the Matt Murdock state, which is rain and crying for like 10 plus years.
But that's the thing. I mean, Bendis and Malev's run, we all agree, is one of the best runs on Daredevil. And it was fantastic. What we complained about Daredevil was that then Brubaker and Diggle followed that script, and now that Mark Waid and Paulo Rivera and Marcus Martin are giving a bright version of Daredevil, we're like, it's a breath of fresh air. And to answer your question, do comics need to be dark to be good? Well, no. Because there are sunny, bright, positive, poppy comics that are just as good as the dark,
but they don't sell because the audience has shrunk to the level where
they've evolved to where it has. We talk about the evolution of the audience to the most prime comic audience, which is continuity obsessed, dark and grim and gritty obsessed. Like the most.
They're adults. They want adult stories for themselves, but with the characters.
So is it good for comics overall? Not specifically books themselves, but the industry and.
It's not good that it's the predominant thing. It's good that it exists. It lets you tell a certain kind of story that can be very good.
Well, that's specific. We're talking about overall. Is it good that all the comics have to be this way and there's nothing for kids to read?
No.
Well, I mean, that's a much bigger kind of.
Well, that's the discussion we're having.
I mean, it depends on what angle you take on it, because all that stuff sells. So yes, it's good for comics, but we've seen sales dwindle. Right? Yeah, but but
it sells to the same people, and they're going away. So it's not capturing a bigger. There's no. For a while, there was shock value in it. I think if you looked at when they killed Robin. Mm-hmm. There was a shock value to it. It ends up in the newspaper. It's like, oh my god, because people didn't know. But that story is old now.
Right.
That comics are not for kids anymore. And so there's nothing left to it. Now we're at the point. I think we've seen the sort of end of that spectrum. Is now the only way they can get headlines is by killing somebody.
Right,
Captain America's going to die.
Well, to the point where Marvel said in financial conference calls with investors that part of their business plan is to kill off a character once a quarter to drive sales.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what happens when the bean counters get in control. They're like, oh, well, we killed this guy, sales went up, so do that again. And the problem is that you can't let the dollar, you got to let the story drive. We all know that, but you've got people who are trying to make money and trying to,
and the market supports them for doing that. It works.
But then you look at some of the successes over the past couple of years, like a book like Chew at Image. Mm-hmm. That's got a very bright and sunny kind of look, but it's also kind of an underlying dark tone to it. Yeah, but and it is screwed up in its own right.
I think when you get out of the superhero genre, then all of a sudden those books have lots of different options to do. Right. I think that, like, when I tend to think of dark comics, I tend to think of how it took over superhero comics, which were a kid's medium for the most part. Yeah. And now almost none of them are. And the ones that are relegated.
They're marginalized.
Yeah, they're marginalized. They're the Johnny DC ones. They're a different kind of thing.
See, it's
no variance.
It's tough because as much as I enjoy I'm an adult who reads comics, so as much as I enjoy the serious books, I think at the same time it's strangling.
Yeah.
The adherence to it and not being able to do anything else is strangling it. I almost feel like as much as it sucks, I shouldn't be the audience for comics, for superhero comics.
Right. You shouldn't.
I shouldn't. And
I agree with that.
I think.
Or it should be like
otherwise, the industry's going to be dead in 30
modern
years.
Superhero comics as they exist. This should be a slice of superhero comics, and it should be aimed at some of us. But then it would be great if the others were different tones and sold to different people.
Right.
But
well,
that's what they're thinking
that's
too.
the hope and that's the dream,
But they don't even try it though. They don't seriously try it. They don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Marvel definitely doesn't try it.
Marvel or DC don't. Yeah. They give lip service to trying, and then they go back to selling to the same 200,000 people who read comics.
Well, because they can point to that Captain Marvel series, and we'll know about that.
But
at one point, wasn't Marvel Adventures selling really well?
It's still going.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
still out there. But the thing is, they don't. It's marginalized. It's not.
I mean, it goes back to what you said about what the comic fan launches is something that matters, and Marvel Adventures doesn't truly matter. So it doesn't have the.
It doesn't matter to the current audience,
right?
But then they can't get it to the bigger audience because of whatever reason. Kids don't buy comics. Right. Distribution. You can't buy them in newsstands. Video games. $4 is too much.
Right.
Blah blah blah. All these excuses. So they go, well, let's go back and put a patch on somebody and have them.
But the thing is, if suddenly comics tomorrow appeared at newsstands and supermarkets, what can they sell?
Well,
they can't sell anything to kids.
Well, that backs up to my question. Let's say Watchmen and Dark Knight didn't come out in '86. What world? I mean, was this inevitable in our society?
That's another question.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing. Like, if '86 didn't happen,
blew my mind.
I know it did.
I don't even know how to answer.
If '86 didn't happen, what does the comics landscape look like?
It's just all.
Is it all like
Tom DeFalco?
It's almost impossible to answer because there's so many factors, but.
And it's so all encompassing.
Because Miller and Moore did it, if they didn't, would someone else have done? Would Mark Wolfman have written the landmark Teen Titans story that ushered in the Dark Age?
Probably not.
Would McFarlane's Spawn have still happened?
No, I don't think any of those things happened. But the question is something else would have happened. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah. But there's a parallel universe somewhere where I would be. Well, if
it did, but it kickstarted that boom of the 90s that led, I think that the 86 stuff happened.
Because adults came back.
Batman 89 happens, bolsters that,
right.
and then the Image 90s, early 90s happens.
Right.
Because there's the frenzy that sort of comes about because of it. It's really interesting.
but then at the same time, you look in the past 10 years, and there are people like Jeff Johns and Grant Morrison. Well, Grant Morrison can get pretty dark, but I mean, I think of All-Star Superman, which is that I don't consider that a dark book at all.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
I don't think Jeff Johns is an example of somebody who doesn't go dark.
He goes very dark.
His biggest, it's like dark with a patina of light.
He does a good job of portraying an image of this sunny night, but his comics are really dark.
Blackest Night there was a lot of eating of people.
Remember the Nazi that ran through the kid in Justice Society?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It's funny because if you read Super Gods, Morrison talks a lot about the tone, the changing tone in comics, and how it's different now. And it's hard. You want to write these bright, sunny superheroes, but the audience doesn't want. They want this to angst over. And again, I'll read these books and like them too. I'm part of the problem.
But then it goes back to my question. Like, if you look at other mediums, music went with grunge and with into the 90s. They're all mirrors of themselves, and especially like looking at movies and things like that. I think this is the progression of that our culture of our society has taken.
Yeah, but we go through music goes through pop
music goes through cycles all the time.
Like every year there's
10 years ago it was all about Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. It was 5 years and his comics has never changed.
And every year there are a bunch of big dumb romantic comedies that are big at the box office. So it's not. There's none of that variance in when I say comics, 90% of the market is mainstream superhero comics. So, there's other stuff out there. Obviously, Image does a bajillion types of books.
Right.
Oni, Top Shelf, whoever.
Of course, Drawn and Quarterly, Fantagraphics.
There's a lot of different books.
That's
out
why
there.
You can't. Yeah,
but it's such a sliver.
But we're talking about the one
main.
That drives the whole thing. I don't. Yeah. To me, it feels like these are great books that are sort of hampering any kind of growth in the market.
Which is the catch-22 because they're so great and so.
Yeah, but they're great to adults.
No, I mean, I talk about the landmark ones. Like, they're so great.
No, I mean the tone in general, the fact that the audience demands realism and demands that these superheroes are angsty and have problems.
Can either of you think of a story in the last 5 years that doesn't fall under the realistic? Dark thing.
All-Star Superman.
Tons, but are they super popular is the question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like Thor the Mighty Avenger, but it wasn't. It was
All-Star Superman.
Yeah.
All-Star Superman is probably the exception to this whole thing.
He had cancer, didn't? I mean,
but it was.
That's no different than. Yeah. If you look back, those are common stories.
Yeah, that was in the 70s. Yeah. We're not going to solve this. I mean, that's the thing. Is that it's an open-ended question, and it's as the comics medium continues, the more books come out, it continues to define and evolve. But who knows?
But the thing is, do you like this? Do you enjoy reading the comics that aren't dark?
I do.
Yeah,
and I can't deny that. Like we're going to talk about that Detective Runner. If you look at most of
that aren't dark.
Oh, that aren't?
Yeah,
of course.
I know you and I do.
Yeah, I love them.
I do, but I don't see a lot of them that are
you
that
tend to
good.
not like the comic booky elements and stories that are like kind of goofy and fun and funny.
Yeah, I mean
science
that's why I
fiction-y.
love Madman because Madman is nothing but bouncy and and that's So I mean, you're the problem. You're the one who wants the dark, gritty, realistic ones. We're the ones who are
I tend to. I actually with me is I tend to not want superhero stories, so I want to read other things. But like that, my thing is that dark stuff has a place in other genres as well. It doesn't necessarily. Like in comics today, the most talented and most successful people end up doing Marvel and DC because that's how they can make a living doing it. So that's where their outlet is, and it's this sort of incongruous, really. It's kind of odd that that's how it works.
Yeah.
But I do wish that there were other things.
Yeah, well, you're enjoying the hell out of Daredevil by Wade.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the same time though, like I feel like. The
moment that story doesn't go the direction you want it to,
no, I feel like that Frank Miller Bendis stuff is all right under the surface of all that too. So
it's built on top of it. I mean, that's why it's been good, is because it didn't forget all that. Yeah, it's doing that in the face of it.
But it's not like a Silver Age comic.
No, I don't want it to be a Silver Age comic. Not at all. I want it to be I want it to be exactly what it is right now.
Matt Murdock's crows are going to come home to roost.
Wow.
I'd actually love a return to Silver Age elements. Yeah. And I think there are some every now and then. You get them. In strangest places you wouldn't expect, like guys like Jason Aaron puts a lot of sort of Silver Age elements into his X-Men stuff.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. That's
which I love.
Which is why I'm loving it. Yeah.
And I think I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to return to that sort of pop science, goofy sort of Silver Age aesthetic in a lot of comics because that's the one thing comics can do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They can have big giant planet battles and things like that, and a gun that shoots through the earth and kills someone on the other side. It doesn't make any sense, but it's awesome. And it's fun.
Because that's why there's no budget. So.
Yeah.
Well, we can go on and on debating and discussing.
I know that you have opinions.
Yeah, exactly.
And so make sure that you get to the website, iFanboy.com, and you can comment on this show. Use that. And
let's hear what you think about the dark tones of comics, whether they're good or bad. And get in touch with us. Shoot us an email, contact@ifanboy.com, or call our voicemail line at 1-888-FANBOYS. That's 1-888-326-2697.
We're on Twitter at twitter.com/iFanboy, on Facebook at facebook.com/iFanboy. Be our friend and like us.
Yeah, we're not dark people.
We need to be liked on Facebook.
Right. Lights.
Camera. Oh, and you got to switch the ND filter back on the camera.
What was it on?
It's on the other side.
What should it be on?
The off.
Spacebar.
Spacebar?
All right, Connor, you start.
Lone Star.
I haven't watched Spaceballs in forever. I used to watch it all the time when I was a kid.
I love that scene with the video.
All of it's so good.
When they're looking, it's like, wait, now is now? Yeah. What are you like?
Then!
Okay, ready?
Pizza's gonna send out
Kowalski.
for you.